Let's talk about the two types of diminished scales. So there are two types of diminished scales. The first is the whole step, half step diminished scale. And the second is the half step, whole step diminished scale. And I'm going to show you how learning these two scales is really simple in all 12 keys because there's actually only 3 of them. And I'm a huge fan of not wasting time and killing lots of birds, so to speak, with one stone. So the first scale we're going to check out is the whole step, half step scale. So go ahead and grab your horn, and we're going to do the whole step, half step scale in the key of C. And the scale is simply that. You go a whole step and a half step and a whole step and a half step and a whole step and a half step until we reach the octave. Now this is a symmetrical scale because the whole step, half step pattern is the same throughout the entire scale. And there's actually an extra note in this particular scale. So there are 8 notes before you get to the octave. So the chord is made up of all minor thirds. So the chord is the C on the root, the E flat, the G flat, and unharmonic spelling of B double flat, which is really A for us, right? So if you flat a B twice, that brings you to A, but it just looks better and it's enharmonically spelled correctly when you use the B double flat. But we're just going to say A for now, okay? Other way of thinking of it is if you approach each chord tone by a half step. So go ahead and play the chord first. Now let's approach each one of those chords by a half step. We get the same thing. Now let's play from E flat to E flat and don't change any of the notes. So the notes are going to be exactly the same because the pattern's the same. Whole step, half step, whole step, half step. E flat. Okay? Whole step, half step. Now let's start on G flat. It's exactly the same notes as C. Now let's finish with A. I'm going to take it down an octave, whatever's more comfortable. Okay? Those 4 scales all use the same notes. Nothing changes. So by learning one scale, you've just learned 4 whole step, half step scales. I hope you're still with me. It can be kind of confusing. Now go back and play the C whole step, half step diminished scale. But this time, we're going to start on D. So that now we're going to learn the half step, whole step scale. So let's do that. Now notice those notes are exactly the same as the C whole step, half step scale, only we started on D. The chord changes you use for whole step, half step scales are usually diminished chords. The chord changes that you can play half step, whole step scales, diminished scales, are usually dominant 7 flat 9s and occasionally the dominant 7 sharp 9. Okay. Once again, improvisation isn't all about scales, but man, it really helps you a lot to start to delve into these scales in order to navigate through some of these other types of changes that you'll see. So let's play that D half step, whole step scale again. Now remember, it's the same notes as the C whole step, half step scale. Now we'll go back to D, half step, whole step scale, but don't change any of the notes. Now let's start on F, half step, whole step. It's all the same notes. Now let's play A flat, half step, whole step. Now let's play the B, half step, whole step. It's all the same notes. So, what have we learned thus far? The C whole step, half step scale, the E flat whole step, half step, the G flat whole step, half step, the A whole step, half step, the D half step, whole step, the F half step, whole step, the A flat half step, whole step, and the B half step, whole step. But really, we've learned one scale. One scale, and we've learned 8 other scales because they're all technically the same notes. Okay? Now, if you do this whole thing, all these patterns and whatnot, go up to C sharp and do the same thing, you get the other 8 scales. Go up to D, you get the other 8 scales. So in essence, we're learning 24 scales by learning 3 scales. You've learned 12 whole step, half step scales and 12 half step, whole step scales, right? By learning 3, right? 3 scales get you 24. I like those. I like thinking of it that way, right? That's how I've learned it that way. And hopefully that's going to help you too. Be sure to go to my website and download 4 scales for jazz improvisation, which includes the diminished scales. Or you can subscribe to my website as well and get the free ebook 11 scales for jazz improvisation, and that's free as well. Hopefully this wasn't too confusing. Be sure to shoot me a comment. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have, and we'll catch you on the next video.